Hello everyone and welcome back. This is my second part of the video about Victorian literature and in particular about the novel and the poetry. So here we go. Last time we stopped talking about the women voice in the Victorian novel. So now we're going on talking about colonialist fiction and the American prose. So, um, talking about Britain's colonies, they weren't mentioned many times in Victorian literature. The only exception consists in popular adventure novels for boys, where the imperialism is shown, let's say, in a misleading way, mainly because the colonizers were seen as heroes who helped the natives. An example could be The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. Moving on to the American prose, we can say that American authors wanted to escape from English literature's tradition and wanted to find their own voice. So, if we think about American literature, the first literature talked about the relationship between the colonizers and the natives coexisting in the same place. Um, in English Puritans' view, they saw the savage and the natives of that period in they say that they were wild and they were evil. Um, and especially the Puritan colonists saw American as as a promised land where they can re-educate the um, the savages. But so these vast American spaces led to the image of colonizers and native coexisting in peace, but this was like too idealistic. An example could be The Last of the Mohicans by J.F. Cooper. But of course, they didn't understand that the evil is not in the place where men live, but it's inside the man, in the man. So, the other American novels could talk about the decay and disintegration of European values and consciousness in America. Some example of authors are, of course, Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne with his Scarlet Letter. Of course, we have also the current of transcendentalism, where writers and philosophers affirm the essential goodness of man and his freedom. Think about the books of Henry David Thoreau or Ralph Waldo Emerson. And last but not least, we have Herman Melville and his idea of fraternity, which was a society of brothers and sisters whose relations were determined by an ethic of truth and trust. Okay, so we have another type of novel, well, more than one, but we are going to put it all together. So we have the fiction of crime, mystery, and supernatural. The first one is the sensation novel. A sensation novel is a genre of suspense in crime fictions, which included shocking subjects like adultery, theft, kidnapping, insanity, bigamy, seduction, and of course murder. An example is William Wilkie Collins' The Woman in White. Then we have an evolution of the sensation novel, which is the detective novel or detective story. And in this case, the detective manages to find the criminal with proofs and with the science of deduction. Think about Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. And for the last, we have the theme of the supernatural. We can find some supernatural elements in sensation novels, but the main example of supernatural, mixed, of course, with technology and science is Dracula by Bram Stoker. So Dracula is also called a Victorian Gothic for its particular theme. Of course, in the end, the supernatural doesn't win. but with the help of technology and science, the protagonists are able to prevail upon the supernatural. Let's talk about the poetry. So the poetry, it's not possible to find a cohesive group with a collective vision in the Victorian age, because it was characterized by too many rapid changes. So it's more likely to find writers who can represent different attitudes and approaches. First one, we have Arthur Tennyson and Robert Browning. They were the two major poets of the Victorian age, and in their poetry they attempt to reconcile romanticism and classicism to find a balance between individual freedom and social duty. Tennyson, Tennyson in particular he creates melancholy and sadness in his poems using dramatic monologues. Also, Robert Browning used the dramatic monologue, and he expressed extreme emotions, which were tempered by the use of humor and irony. And then, of course, we have Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Elizabeth Barrett was Robert Browning's wife, and she is one of the first writers to explicitly develop a feminist consciousness. She is the one of the main inspiration for example, for Virginia Woolf. So she addresses the problems of women's writers' social and political role, and she believed that a poet should address the problems of his or her age and not celebrate the past. Then, of course, we have a group of poets which were called pre-Raphaelite. Um, they reacted against the unimaginative art of the period, trying to go back to the aesthetic values of Italian artists who lived before Raphael. They were inspired by nature, by disturbing excess of sensuality, and they reevaluate medieval religion and legends as well as mysticism. And then, of course, in the end, we have the American voices of Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Whitman transformed the English language completely, inventing a new kind of syntax through long wandering sentences, which mirrored a bit the wandering life of the poet. So on one hand we have with Walt Whitman talking about the vast expanses of the American continent, but on the other we have Emily Dickinson, who turned inwards to explore the realm of mental and spiritual solitude. So Emily Dickinson's Spaces of Solitude represents the immensity of human soul. Okay, I wanted to keep separate spot for Oscar Wilde, because he wasn't just a novelist and he wasn't just a poet. He was both, and he was also a playwright. So Oscar Wilde, of course, he's mainly known for the novel The Picture of Dorian Gray, but with his witty comedies for the theatre, he obtained a huge success. We have some example. For example, we have Lady Windermere's Fan and An Ideal Husband, and of course the most famous play, which is The Importance of Being Earnest. Then, during his 2 years of conviction for homosexual acts, he wrote the poem The Ballad of Reading Gaol and his prose confession, De Profundis. So Wilde's plays criticize the Victorian values, but in a subtle comic way. So thanks to the witty dialogues and absurd characters, his social comedies were really successful. And in the end, Wilde was a supporter of the aesthetic movement, denying the moral and political significance of art and underlying the beauty of it. So he was really famous for the motto, "The art for the art," which means it's just the beauty and not the use you can make of the art itself. Okay, thank you. This was the end. And if you have any question, don't hesitate and put them in the comment down below and write me. Thank you. Bye.